So thanks a bunch, Vardhan, for joining us today.
Yes.
Vardhan is the founder of a company called Tortoise, and we learn lots about Tortoise's ambition and its product market fit in a bit. But Vardhan, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you take the entrepreneurial plunge.
Yes. So right now I'm working on my latest startup, Tortoise, but I took my first plunge in this ride-sharing startup called Ridingo, which I later sold uh,
Hmm.
to Carzonrent, one of the largest B2B players in India. So yeah, my background is I've done my engineering, then I've studied economics. I'm also SEBI registered investment advisor. The license is expired, but yeah, I have active interest in. I'm one of those guys who generally people go to an office for asking how to save taxes and so on. So,
Okay.
so yeah. So coming back on why this plunge, I think lucky to be born in a generation where wealth generation is possible for first generation entrepreneurs in a fairly fast manner if you play that card right. So I wanted to do that, but that fastness has not played out as I thought it would. But hopefully sometime soon.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about when you took the decision to become a founder, especially in a sort of crowded ecosystem like fintech? What are your what are your learnings and unlearnings?
Got it. So before this, I started working on fintech in 2019 when I wanted to start Wealth School. It did not take off, but this was something which we wanted to do to score personal financial health, and this was a personal problem.
Mm,
While if you ask someone what is their credit worthiness, they tell you it's 780.
mm,
That's it. But
mm,
if I ask you how's your financial health, nobody has a crisp answer.
mm,
So we thought that this is a good problem to solve, and that's what we wanted to solve. And founders generally do not are not analysts.
mm,
Founders are not. I mean, generally, and Jeff Bezos was an analytical founder, but most founders are not analysts who are looking at market data and then trying to decide which and where to take plunge. Most founders are driven by personal problems or a gap they think exists and that they think they are uniquely placed to solve. So I believe that's how it works out. And I thought that I could solve that. Unfortunately, we could not solve that because it was dependent on government releasing account aggregator ecosystem and APIs with all banks, which has still not come since 2016 that has been announced. So we could not work on it. Then I worked with FamPay guys, a leadership consulting role. And then I started working on Tortoise because I saw that there's a specific behavior which exists in a particular industry called jewelry, but the expenses have changed completely. We are looking at a place where uh, this elf. So we are looking at a place where we are spending more and more money in things other than jewelry. So 10 years ago, jewelry was the only thing where people used to spend the biggest in a year's time.
mm,
But now we spend on travel, we spend on luxury goods, we spend on gadgets, we spend on mobile phones, we spend on um, two-wheelers, four-wheelers, and so many other things. And so I thought that this great model should exist in other industries as well, and nobody is doing that. It did not start as an antithesis of taking credit. It started as a solution to merchants where they can accept advance. So this is, I think, this is not an analysis which we've done. I mean, it was done, but I did not take the plunge because it was not crowded or something. It's more like this should exist in world, and I can make it possible, so I should do it.
You remember like the inception of the idea? Like what problem did you face? Which day that you thought that I wish this kind of platform existed where I could save for an aspirational spend?
So actually, this was something which started because I saw that the while the percentage figure of returns kept uh, I mean, say for example, if I'm earning 10% interest on something, and generally a salaried person would put money every month. And when you actually see the absolute money, it's not much. So if you save 100 rupees per month on a plan which gives you 10% interest or 12% interest for the ease of calculation, after 6 months, you think you will earn a lot. Say you've accumulated 600 rupees, you're thinking that, okay, now I should have probably made 7.2 rupees on it, which is 12% of 600. Um, but you've not, 72 rupees. But you've not. You would have made not more than uh, 18 rupees on that. Rough calculation, don't take me off calculation, but it's way low. And so I thought that returns make sense in the long run. When you're saving up for something way long, then all these things compound and add up. But if I'm saving up for something which is short term, say next few months' time, I would rather have a deal like what Tanishq had in jewelry. You deposit these many installments and you get one installment free or 0.5 installment free. And so I thought that, look, this is a great thing which works very well. Some estimates put the say sale of jewelry from these kind of schemes is 25% of the overall market of India. So I thought that, if this behavior exists in jewelry, if not that successfully, but to a certain extent, this kind of a solution can also make sense for things like an Apple purchase or a luxury purchase or an aspirational purchase, if not luxury. So that's when I realized that let's do this. And the first thought was that, even a 5% cashback is bigger than 20% return if you do SIP for 6 months. So this understanding led me to sort of think about Tortoise.
You know what, Vardhan, I'm curious to know about how you're educating your user base. I remember once seeing a Twitter poll, if I'm not mistaken, by the founder of Cred, by Kunal Shah, which said if I gave you $1 million now, or if I gave it to you over a period of 10 years, which one would you choose? And the audience came back saying, oh, in 10 years, because that seemed to be the sensible answer. And he was just baffled by how people didn't understand the fundamental concept of compounding.
Yep.
Right? And so that when and these are tech savvy people who are using Twitter, who obviously understand something about finances. But how do you think you'll bridge that kind of understanding in your user base?
We can't. So that's a defeat I've accepted. So not only Kunal, but I have also done multiple polls with hundreds of people responding to that. I've done polls asking, will you choose a 20% yearly return on a repeating or recurring deposit of 100 rupees, or you will accept 5% cashback? In this manner, I've asked difficult questions like these. And hundreds of people have responded. Some of these people from, IIM, ISP, IITs, people from banking industry. And 50% people, I think exactly there was 43% people gave the wrong answer. So when we're looking at a general sense, it does not make sense for people. And that's why you see the finance industry in India is push based. When you go to a bank branch, the branch guy tries to sell you worst product possible, and people buy it because they don't understand the nuances, they don't understand the concept of risk or compounding really well. And I've accepted that we will not be able to get a logical response to what we are saying is better answer. So we've stopped using interest or APY in our offering.
Yeah. No, I mean, that I think is one of the reasons that book, right, The Psychology of Money, became so popular, because it is an emotional decision. I feel like my bank is more trustworthy. And I mean, they have built trust over decades, right? That
Of course.
recall that I've kept money with ICICI Bank,
Yeah.
even though if it's the worst product, but I've kept it with a bank.
No, forever grateful to institutions like RBI and overall. I mean, I'm very bullish on India because
Mm.
I've
Mm.
traveled in multiple nations and I've dealt in businesses across at least two nations outside India, Singapore and the US. And you would think that these are progressive. I mean, these are as progress nation as you would, consider on rankings of, technology savviness and overall progress and GDP and everything. But the banking is horrible.
Mm.
And while you can trust that the money will not go somewhere, but the way charges are being levied, the way transparency has been eluded because of banks not trying to work together,
Mm.
thanks to institutions like NPCI and RBI and SEBI, we
Mm.
live in a very very privileged world in India. So yeah, that trust on ICCI which you mentioned is
Mm.
also because RBI is very strict with these banks, and we have the department which also gives us insurance up to 5 lakhs now. I
Mm.
forgot the full form. I think DGCIC or something. Deposit Guarantee Insurance Corporation of India. Yeah, DGIC. So that's it. Bank is more trustworthy.
Yeah, I think I'm of UPI as well. Okay.
Abranta, I lost you for last
Can you
10
tell us
seconds.
now? Sorry, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, but I lost you for the last 10 seconds.
Okay. No, perfect. I mean, I was just speaking about how I think we've got one of the world's most sophisticated sort of financial sector regulators, and
Yeah,
UPI is really an example of how the world is
brilliant.
looking to us. I think it's an outlier really, and it's a regulatory push first product. Okay. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Tortoise and what you're building on your merchant side and your customer side. So how is the experience of building both sides of the network?
Yeah. So, disclaimer here is that we have not yet succeeded. So I'm still in the process. So, whatever I am saying right now is dependent upon our assumptions and hope it'll work out. Now, building a platform, and I've done it twice now, is a multitude of orders more complex and tough and hard to build than general building a product and selling it out.
Mm.
And some of the so by the way, I consider YC and Andreessen Horowitz and some of these investors who are good with their content push.
Mm.
I really believe on some of them because they are not coming from the point of view of signaling or proving their authority. They're coming from the point of view of statistics that they have over multi years of experience of investing.
Mm.
And some of the best entrepreneurs and investors have covered this platform problem. And now it is considered to be a very well respected opinion that you have to build supply first
Mm.
and you have to crack a category first.
Mm.
And so if you look at the two most successful marketplaces in India, which is in e-commerce, we have Flipkart and Amazon. Both, I mean, Flipkart followed the same playbook of Amazon. They first started with books.
Mm.
It is a non-perishable category, easy to transport, affordable by a lot more people. People who read books are also likely to be well read, and therefore, if you gain their trust, then they are likely to spend on the platform. And they make sure that they have a wide selection of books for people to feel really good when ordering from these places. And they cracked that first. And then they went into other categories and other categories. So we are also looking at solving for one category really well
Mm.
and then expanding into other categories and other merchants and other verticals.
Mm. Okay. Um, to a consumer, what's the pitch? I mean, there are 101 buy now, pay later options I have. And
Yes.
I feel like Tortoise is doing save now, pay later, that kind of a model.
Save now, buy later.
Save now, buy later. What's
Yes.
the pitch to the consumer?
So you see, so first of all, pitch is that you get rewarded for planning your purchase in advance.
Mm.
That's it. That's the pitch that we have, and we're keeping it simple. And but what we are really targeting, what kind of consumers we are really targeting, what kind of behavior we are targeting, is something which needs to be explored. And our belief is that until there is a solution which is provided, which is really good and which gains trust by the way of performance or user experience and so on. Until then, that sort of behavior looks elusive.
Mm.
This happens across various innovations. When Apple launched iPad, people said people either use mobile or laptop. Why do we need something in between? It's phenomenally successful. When I don't know if you know this or not, but like cred, you can also use Paytm and Amazon to pay your credit card bills.
Yeah.
Nobody uses that because they have taken this category and started it, and now everybody associates paying credit card bills with it. So now we believe that there's a huge segment of users who believe in the concept of saving up before buying,
Mm.
either because it's their habit or because it's a compulsion, because they are either not privileged to have easy access to credit cards,
Mm.
or they simply do not use credit cards, or they do not want EMI.
Mm.
I am one of those guys. I've never taken EMI.
Mm.
Unless you tell me that taking EMI will make it actually cheaper. I do not believe in, cash flow breaking, because I have always had enough money to not worry about that.
Mm.
But sometimes you get an offer that if you take it on EMI, you get like 5% more or 10% more off, which is strange. Maybe bank is trying to convert folks into taking loans, but
Which always
I
has a
will.
footnote, by the by. There's always a footnote there where actually you end up paying more. They actually, the RBI actually wrapped a few EMI players on the knuckles because it was just such misleading.
Charges, processing charges, and processing
Yeah,
fees, and
it's
you're right.
processing charges. Yeah.
So I believe that there's a huge segment which today is dormant because nothing exists,
Mm.
and therefore nobody knows that how big this market is.
Mm.
When you get into a shop, 100 people walks into a shop. Say for example, Imagine Stores in Bangalore,
Mm.
run by Ample, which is our launch partner. When 100 people walk into an Imagine store, and this is not, this is a representative figure, not actual figures, and 100 people wanted to buy an Apple product, only, you know, 20-25 people would have enough money to make a purchase without worrying about it.
Mm.
Another 20-25 people would actually go ahead and take one of those affordability solutions, which is EMIs, BNPL schemes by these companies which are offering them. The 40-50% folks who came and did not make a purchase are not actually those who do not want to make a purchase or are not going to make a purchase.
Mm.
They're the people who bought a dream today when they walked in. And they go back taking that dream and then start saving up.
Mm.
Or they think about saving up. And then sometimes life happens, sometimes plan change, or sometimes you forget, or sometimes you're not able to withhold that money in your bank account. And the merchant lost on those 50 people, which are not recorded anywhere, because for the merchant, those 50 people who transacted either using affordability solutions or using their cash or cards or whatever, this forms a 100% audience.
Mm.
And rest are considered walk-ins who did not do anything. What can we do to ensure that this leaky bucket of high aspiration folks who walked in can then be captured and engaged today itself, taken on a journey which is very engaging, and then put back into the transaction funnel, and therefore actually creating a solution to deal with those 50% of people or much more I mean, Apple or any retailer does not process more than 20-30% of people who walk in. So we are looking at a huge chunk of users who can be engaged and not engaging. Even people who transact, they're not always transacting for a full thing. Uh, I mean, imagine when you, I mean, especially true for Apple folks and true for multiple other industries. You go and walk in and buy, say, for example, an iPhone. Everybody who owns an iPhone would want to have an Apple Watch and AirPods.
Mm.
But the bill keeps increasing really fast.
Mm.
So they take one thing, then they have to take another thing, which they don't purchase right now. Now the merchant is losing on that because then that person will walk away and probably buy this from other store.
Mm.
We are providing this to the merchant opportunity to take that business and go beyond simple loyalty points and so on, which is not actually powerful. Get them to commit, and you have a much higher probability of sale than those loyalty points of calling people that sir you can come back and so on. So I think this is a very powerful solution which should exist and which can create immense value on both the sides of the table.
Yeah. I mean, the way you articulated it really makes sense, right? Even for the merchant, he has some visibility over, when his customer is going to recur, and it makes a lot of sense from your supply side as well, not just from the consumer side. What did you not know before you started up, that you know now? What's the big friction point?
Uh, so 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 if you take an example of any aspirational item, and if you take a potential user, the relationship between these or the aspiration can be defined, and this is the framework which I use to explain this behavior. The aspiration can be graded into 10 scale of 10. So your aspiration at level 0 is that you have no aspiration, and aspiration at level 10 is that you borrow money, you sell your kidney, and you buy whatever. So you make the purchase happen. Hook or crook at level 10. Now, for any product and any person combination, this aspiration can be anywhere between 0 to 10.
Mm.
Okay. So now we take Aparajita and Apple iPhone 14.
Mm.
Okay. Or 13, whatever. iPhone. Your aspiration today might be 0 if you do not like iPhone or if you have just purchased a new phone. Maybe it's iPhone. But so, for example, someday you realize that okay, uh, maybe your cousins had a kid, and you realize that look, I love to have photographs of children which are better than this phone, and iPhone photographs are much beautiful. So your aspiration level went to one, and one level is defined as where you start noticing the features of the product or the offering of the product. At level 2 and 3, you actively start looking at the ads or the videos and stop skipping the ads if they come across you in various interactions with the media.
Mm.
And at level 4, you start planning to buy it. And then up to level 8, you don't act on it, you just keep going online, keep discussing it with your friends, start making plans and so on. So I believe that you can only get people to start saving up
Mm.
between a aspiration level of 4 to 8. You cannot simply advertise this offering to general folks and
Mm.
expect that they will start saving up on Tortoise. Which means that at no point in time I will be able to just do a marketing campaign and people will start saving up on my platform. It has to have a very specific point where I can pitch this. And this is something which is an insight which we realize after talking to thousands of folks.
Mm.
While the concept might be great, I have to qualify on part of that whether I want that product, then whether I want to save up for that product,
Mm.
and which makes it much more difficult to sort of grow in the initial days. So that is a new insight that came across. Otherwise, on after working, the other big insight that came through us, which is sort of positive, is that unlike the widely held belief that instant gratification is ubiquitous in the youth of India. It's not true. We have interviewed 300 plus folks in that age group.
Mm.
It's not true at all. People are not looking to have loan all the time.
Mm.
People are not looking to party and spend whatever money they can spend out of credit cards and these offerings all the time. They're very smart folks. They understand the implications. But the sheer size of our market is so big that from the point where loan was inaccessible to a large population of India to a place where it is accessible to a certain percentage, that growth looks phenomenal,
Mm.
which falsely create this narrative of that instant gratification is equal. No, it's not. A large population of youth understand the implications of borrowing money.
Mm.
And even those who have actually made the mistake of borrowing beyond their means, they learn very quickly and they don't do it the second time. So when we talk to people, they were very clear that they will only take loan for either home or automobile, which is a culturally accepted categories in India to
Mm.
take loan. 75% people said that they will not take loan for anything else. So we have like majority of people who knew that other 25%, 19% of these folks said that we might take a EMI if that is a great offering and that makes sense for us and I want that product.
Mm.
Which means that we are left with only 6% people who believe that loan is okay and they
Mm.
don't feel guilty about it. It's a very fairly small audience, considering whoever you talk to in the ecosystem might start pitching that instant gratification is the way to go. It's not always. People plan. As I said, you never have data for it because a person who has come to the store to buy something, obviously they're looking to buy something today. And so if they convert into a loan customer and there they formulate 50% or 40% of our audience, you tend to think that that is the only solution possible. But the people who are starting to save, there is no signal or they are not coming to and committing that you have started to save. So that data is not there. So I believe that with time you'll come to know that the market size of savers is much bigger than the market size of borrowers.
I think that's incredibly interesting. A lot of BNPL companies also, actually, a lot of post-pay companies, they're very careful to never say the word loan because loan has such incredible
Yeah.
stigma. It has such a bad aftertaste, right? Just that
Yes.
bonding loan and stuff like that. So they never
Yes.
say that they're borrowing money. It's almost couched as a convenient payment option. Right? And payments still, even after UPI, payments still has some friction from the point
Yes.
of purchase, from the point of desire to the point of actual transaction. Um, do you think that you're going after the same target group? And I'll refine my question a little bit. Like you said, that every person who's looking to immediately to purchase, for a large purchase or an aspirational spend, isn't the sort of instant gratification audience, the audience that maybe the BNPL players are looking at. But do you think that you're going after the same target group that the BNPL players are going by, even though they're offering a lending product, masquerading as a payment product, but you're offering something quite different, a savings product for one day making a aspirational purchase?
Yes. So, if the question is that are we targeting the same demographic,
Mm.
the answer is yes.
Mm.
We are targeting people who do not have cash lying around to spend on the product that they are thinking about. Now, please focus on the word that I'm saying that money lying around for that product.
Mm.
So, even a person at my age, salary bracket, or wealth levels, I've done good in life. I think I can spend on fairly any of the electronic stuff without thinking twice from the point of view of capability to spend. But I simply could not make myself buy an iPad since
Mm.
last 2 3 years
Mm.
because I could not justify the need of an iPad
Mm.
to myself. But I remember I told my friend that, and same salary levels, IIT, ISP, great salary, great life, very considerate on what he wants to buy. I told him, if you take notes, and he does, I said, nothing is better than iPad. So he went and tried it and really liked it. And then he went on a plan to save for it. Because it was still a luxury product, or a frivolous or a guilty product, that's the right word, for them. So while I think mostly we'll be catering to people who are at an income level where it is unsustainable for them to just go and buy it. But we are also going after the guilty purchase market, where it's not about the salary level, but about the behavior of buying. So I think our product will make sense to a wider audience, to those who need to save, and for those who like to save. So that is the first thing. The second thing is, I do not think that I will be able to ever appeal to a person who has already made up his mind to make a purchase, or is comfortable with a post pay, not the brand, but post payment or a buy now pay later kind of a product. And I believe that should exist. Buy now pay later or any kind of credit penetration is extremely important for any nation to grow. Now, I'm an economics student apart from engineering, and one of the things which we learned is that access to credit and usage of credit results in more production, more growth for a nation. So if more people are able to buy stuff and they make their purchases, there's more commerce, there's better growth. So I'm not opposed to the idea of credit. I'm opposed to the idea of non-thought or irresponsible credit usage. And it's very easy to fall into that side. And people are aware of this, but they still fall into that side. So it's like saying that there are gambling companies in the world. They're gambling, for example. I mean, we might disagree on multiple facts, but there are multiple asset classes in India which is almost equal to gambling. And I would go and probably make a lot of enemy by saying that even to a certain extent, the stocks are also gambling. Because while we can do all the technical analysis and all that, but ultimately the pricing is a pricing of a share, a listed share on the bourses in India. The price is a function of the sentiment of people. There's no science to it. It's not statistical, it's not mathematical. And so as soon as you start taking sentiments into the picture, then that becomes probabilistic and undeterministic, and therefore it is a gambling. And so people are attracted towards these kind of activities. And so I believe that at least we should offer something which present an alternative to people who do not want to. And so to conclude my answer, I think while demographically we will be offering this to similar customer profile, but a BNPL user who has not felt bad about using it is probably never going to come to us. So that will be a different market altogether.
And BNPL has gotten a bit of a has had a bit of a PR scare lately as well.
Yes.
With people are now realizing these are loans. Like
Yeah.
postpaid is a loan. It's not just
Yesterday, I checked my credit score refreshed my credit score on credit, and it dropped like 7-8 points. I feel bad about it, and it said it dropped because I had a new loan in my. And I said, boss, I have never taken a loan in my life. Where is it coming from? So there's this company called Hendon. And I said, I've never heard of the company. So I went and Google searched it, and I realized that it is a company which post-pay brand from Bharat Pay uses as a NBFC. And I remember just to check out the UX, I created an account there. Because somebody said that they have a great user experience, design and all. I just used phone number and OTP, and I said yes to the conditions. They have opened, at least my credit report now knows that I'm registered on that. I've not taken a loan, but it is the account has been opened with that NBFC. I definitely did not want that. So yes, you're right. It's a scary thing.
what you've articulated is exactly what the regulator is looking at right now.
Yeah.
And I see the problem statement, right? Because when you go to download one of these apps, they have an NBFC at the back end. They want to hawk Vardhan the right kind of loan. They want to immediately underwrite you and say that you're eligible for a loan of 5,000 or whatever it may be, or a buy now pay later option or so much.
Yes.
They ping your credit score. They ping your credit bureau to get that
Yes.
data from you. The moment they do that hard pull of that data, your credit score gets impacted because to the to the credit bureau, you're a credit hungry user. You're looking for a loan
Yeah.
somewhere. So it
Yeah. I
impacts your
started my career with credit scoring company. So
yeah.
I mean, one of those guys who I literally built models for credit scoring, statistical models for the US market, but there are like hundreds of things that can impact it. And
Yeah.
I'm like on a minute level. But yeah, you're right. I never wanted my credit report to be hard.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I did not realize that they were doing it just by me signing in. And I'm sure that they
Absolutely.
have written somewhere that I'm sure they're not doing anything illegal. It's just that I was not expecting it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one more lesson that our regulators have made sure at all the points, as much as possible, that disclaimers are given, rules are made to, for example, uh, anyone talking about market, they have to add this line that subject to market risk and so on.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is it's like one of those statutory warning which loses its value by being repeated every time. So now smokers ignore the cancer warning. It's no more effective. So risk, everywhere is risk. So you tend to cater to that statement as it just runs risk in your. So I think I also fell into one of those traps where I thought, okay, it's a financial application, it'll have terms and conditions. I did not go through.
Hmm.
Bang,
Yeah.
I have my credit report now. Some NBFC.
Yeah, I mean, so any industry that sees that kind of spike, right? In BNPL and post-pay options, they've seen really a meteoric rise, especially after demonetization. Obviously, there was some tailwind because of demonetization, etc. And even I guess the pandemic in some ways. Um, there is no regulation actually right now which is prohibiting someone from taking your data and pinging the credit score and couching a loan product as a payment product to you. Now in the whole digital lending industry, and I just want to switch gear, in the whole digital lending industry, uh, what do you feel as a consumer perhaps should be regulated and like hard coded, and what do you think should be left to market forces?
I think, I mean, we are a, we are not a, we are no more a socialistic country.
Mm,
I want the markets to be open as much as possible.
mm,
I think
mm,
the problem is where the market participants start taking advantage of the lack of knowledge of the potential customers. And that's where regulator needs to play very active role.
mm,
And so as far as the knowledge is being given or the efforts have been done to make sure that the consumers understand what they're getting into, the regulation should not come in between.
mm,
Things should not be banned. Things should
mm,
not be disallowed. It's just that it should be explained really well.
mm,
It should have detriments. For example, I mean, simple example is PMS, Portfolio Management Services. Um, I don't know if you know this or not, but portfolio management services used to have 25 lakh rupees as a minimum amount that you need to start with
mm,
when you are giving someone money to manage on your on your behalf in the markets, in the equity markets. And you would see this very common phenomena that say one of your friend will say that I'm doing good in stock market. He'll say, take my money and do it for me as well.
mm, mm,
Very common this thing. And then I believe at some point of time in past, this would have started happening that people will start saying that I've got these tips, I can manage your money and so on. And then SEBI would have realized that this is getting out of hand. So one is that the person who is claiming that has to be registered. That's the first regulation they did. So they are a regulated entity now. The second, they said that the eligibility to participate in this is that you have to at least start with 25 lakhs. And now that limit has been pushed to 50 lakhs. Now, if a person is giving 25 lakhs rupees to manage, there's a very high chance that that person understands the risk. And so that double-sided, I mean, these two steps had made sure that the participants are well aware of the risks, and this is not happening as an open market thing. You don't have any such services where you can simply give money and people will manage. The nearest step in between is small case, where it is not active. You have to the person who is managing your small case. I am a subscriber of a small case portfolio, and the gentleman who manages it or the company that manages it, they can only push the update once every week. And so even whatever is happening right now in the market, they can't just keep asking me to update this, sell this, buy this. Neither they can do it on my behalf. So I think regulators should make sure that participation happens at a level where people are not taking risks which are beyond their understanding or capability, and then it should be left open. So that's what I would believe should happen.
Yeah, that's fair. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about business models, like some of these, especially payments players. I think Paytm is one of the only companies which, and this may have changed, which actually bets on payments to make them money.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how that bet panned out, but they believe that payments is the flywheel that may make them, that has positive unit economics at least. But a lot of payments players these days are saying that payments, my entire payments business is CAC, and I'll use it as a kind of an underwriting tool to then hawk you a loan, either on the merchant side or the customer's side. That takes many different versions, post pay, or they'll partner with a bank to give a credit card, or like a slice and uni model, which is a shape shifting PPI plus credit product, something like that. Do you feel like are you bullish on this kind of digital lending sector, or do you think that it'll see some correction?
So I think when I started working with Ikigai 2-3 years ago, until then I did not realize that the businesses in a country and the innovations in a country are the result of some regulation which which was made for completely entirely different purpose.
Absolutely.
And so the very fact that we have a product like a uni or a slice, which is effectively a credit card, but because of regulations and because regulations prohibit a non-banking company to issue credit cards, and they now have this PPI, then they give loan on that, and then they use it as a wallet. We are just using this this is a regulatory thing. It's not a market thing. It's not a logical thing. They would ideally want to issue credit cards, but they can't because the regulations prohibit it. And so they're doing this. So I think I don't want this shape shifting or whatever innovation which happens on the business model is not because people are trying to be complex. It's because the regulations are prohibiting them to do what the market demands. And apart from criminal or high risk, fraudulent requirements of the of the market, anything else and everything else should ideally be allowed by an active regulator in the country. And so I think I'm bullish on whatever markets asks. So the market needs more credit cards to be issued, but banks are not willing to cater to their customers, then this is one way to cater to them. I think at some point of time, regulators should hopefully come with ease of regulation and start. I mean, and our regulators like that. I mean, we had the payment banks, we had small finance banks. These are all results of regulator listening to the market and then providing the infrastructure and making sure the risk is contained. And the provisions are made to address the difficulties which the user might get into it.
Mm.
And so I think correction would happen towards the side of making it easier for the right players to do the right thing,
Mm.
and people with intentionally risky business model
Mm.
or trying to do, and there are players in the market who are just trying to abuse the system.
Mm.
I think they should be barred. Whether they'll be barred or not, I think they will be. I think India might be late, but India does not. I mean, we are a democracy and we tend to come back to the right things eventually. So if
Mm.
not today, I think a few years down the line, we'll see some of these companies being shut down who are abusing the system. And the companies who are actually just catering to the market needs in the right manner, they will actually see a framework coming. Paytm has seen that. Before Paytm, I don't think PPI directions, master directions existed in the sense for semi-close and all these things. I don't know, you are the right person to comment on it. But Paytm literally built that business for India. And then it got the framework on which it can operate and other people can also operate.
Yeah.
So we sometimes see the market participants creating the way for the regulator to see the new business model and then provide a framework on that.
Yeah.
And the more active the regulators are, better economic outcomes we see in the ecosystem.
Yeah, but even before we get to regulators, I just want to, stress on the actual market in digital lending.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every single fintech entrepreneur that I've spoken to says the words, a few key buzzwords, right? Alternative data. We have sharper underwriting tools. We'll be able to tell whether Vardhan needs a 1,000 rupee loan, when he'll pay it back. Is he over leveraged? They know everything about you. Can't even uninstall the app. So they're constantly seeing, did you leave the city? Did you get your salary on the first through your SMS records, right? We get it. They have deep data underwriting tools, but ultimately it is still a short time frame within which they've collected this data about Vardhan. It isn't an iterated kind of long period of years over which they know Vardhan, right? So they haven't seen too many black swan events. They haven't seen credit cycles turn. Do you feel like these underwriting tools, even though they're great for underwriting Vardhan now, but do you think that they'll endure a couple of credit turns?
So I cannot claim to be like up to date, but this is a question which I can answer with some level of authority because, as I told you, I started my career with credit model building.
Mm.
And so when I hear companies or startups claiming that they have better underwriting skills
Mm.
or some magic formula,
Mm.
it is almost always a red flag for me. Because the only way to expand credit is not some magic formula or data. It's to get the data which is not being accepted by the formal institution yet.
Mm.
So, for example, a bank would never ping your, to the best of my knowledge, would never ping your location data, will never ping your credit card bill cycles and payment data, and so on. But a player like a Bajaj Finserv might,
Absolutely.
and if they're using that data to underwrite more people, they might find comfort in that procedure. But you have to understand, this is at the end of the day, it's a probabilistic exercise. It's a exercise in finding probability,
Mm.
and it's a model which gives you a probability of default.
Mm.
When you get this data, what you're doing is essentially building a model which tells you that what is the probability of default of that person. So if you give money to a person with 85% probability of not defaulting or paying back versus someone with 80% probability, and that 5% you were able to add to that same person because you saw that location data or purchase data or whatever, you're just convincing yourself that you will get your money back.
Mm.
A bank can also give them data. This bank does not need to because bank is trying to play more safe.
Mm.
So I don't think that these companies actually have a better magical formula. Most of them, there are always exceptions and great innovations which are happening. I think some of them have actually done good work. But in most of these cases, they are saying that look, I believe that the bank made the mistake because they took only five things into consideration. I believe the sixth and seventh variable actually increases the probability of them paying back.
Mm.
So let me take that risk.
Mm.
It's not about data. It's about convincing yourself that you should take those risks, and risk pays off.
Mm.
In most cases, if that person is not fraudulent, and there are active bad players in the system,
Mm.
if you remove that, with certain probability, you will earn your money back. And if you have high interest rates, you will actually make a profit out of it.
Yeah.
So it's so to answer your question, I don't think that most of these companies who claim to have additional data can actually build better credit models. They're just taking more risks. That's it.
Yeah.
They
That's an
might claim
interesting.
it through investor.
Yeah. That's an interesting point of view. It's a difference of risk appetite, I guess, not
Yes.
so much whether their underwriting tools are so much more superior than other.
But how do you convince your investors that you're not taking that risk? And that's where you have to come up with this. I have also worked in a company which used to deal with uh, modeling for other things. So I've worked in model making for 3 years of my early part of the career after doing my master's in economics.
Mm.
And we had prediction models for inventory management, where, so for example, a large conglomerate, a large manufacturer wanted to know how much product they should stock up so that the supply chain is not stressed and the users do not return. One of the possible use cases. And we have built models for that. And I'll tell you how the models are being built.
Mm.
They are an exercise in mathematics and hope.
Mm.
Okay. And, and there's always some some non-mathematical element which goes into that. And and you get something out of it,
Mm.
which it is a justification tool rather than in some cases it's more of a justification.
Mm.
And I think in cases where you're talking about, more often than not, it's a justification tool rather than an actual mathematical probability finding tool. So
Mm.
that's what my take is. And again, I'm saying that with a pinch of salt because I have not actually gone ahead talked with someone who has actually built those models.
Oh.
But I've had friends who told me that they've worked in these companies who claim to have better models, but when somebody knowledgeable comes and asks them, they don't have very convincing answers.
Yeah.
So I'm basing my answers on that.
That's fair. Okay. Last question, Vardhan. Two
Yes.
startups in the fintech ecosystem that you are really betting on, that you think that will be the next big thing.
So I really, and this has come like 2 days ago. Cred Avenue is the name of the company which recently raised.
Red Avenue, yeah. Yeah.
So I went and saw the details. I did not know what they were doing. Okay. And I remember this conversation with one of my friend who was a partner at a very reputed VC firm in the Silicon Valley. And he said that Vardhan, I have created a formula of investments, and everybody has their own quirks. He said that I bet primarily on entrepreneurs who have started working on an open source technology which was developed in a larger successful organization.
Mm.
So, for example, one of the example of this is that Hadoop was a large data processing technology or system, which was actually open source system, which was heavily contributed to in Yahoo.
Mm.
And then I think 4 or 5 people left Yahoo and started working on hot on data. And there are a couple of companies which created enterprise version of that open source technology.
Mm.
So they came from a point of very deep expertise. And then they created something because they know the market required, and the
Mm.
current company is not going to work on it.
Mm.
So Credit Avenue is one of those products, which is created by an industry insider who knew the problems, faced the problems, and he captured the maximum value which can be captured by filling in the gaps which he noticed over 10, 15 years of his career. And that is something which I believe is actually creating a lot of value. I think this is one of those rare startups which will qualify all the, which you can tick the check boxes of all the dhanda kind of a category as well. It is
Okay.
making money. It is logical. It does not require heavy expenditure on retaining customers. It's just, it works. That's the first one. The second one, I would like, in the fintech ecosystem. I'm with the disclaimer that I can't take the name Tortoise.
Tortoise is already there.
Yes, and I'm investing my life there, so obviously I believe in that. So
Okay.
the second would be, and I think in a couple of companies in the same category, the platform companies. So when you talk about M2P or Zeta um, and there are a couple of other companies which come into this space, uh, which are doing good work here. Hyperface is working on Ram's company, one of my angels and mentors. All of these companies are creating what is called in VC world pick and shovel business. So where you create the tools to for other businesses to use to build their businesses. And these are amazing companies. I think these are low risk, high return companies, and very bullish on. So M2P is obviously I'm very bullish on. Madhu is also an investor. Hyperface bullish on, because they are providing tools to businesses who have inherent high risk, but they will end up paying these companies whether they succeed or not. So as businesses, I think all these platform businesses, I'm bullish on, especially if they come from India and they provide it for the world. Very bullish on those.
Okay. Thank you so much, Vardhan. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Learned so much today. Thank you so much.
Hi, same. Always a good conversation with you guys.